Support for Talkin Schmit is brought to you by Manscaped, the best in men's below-the-waist grooming, champions of the world. Manscaped offers precision-engineered tools for your family jewels. Manscaped just launched their 4th-generation trimmer, the Lawnmower 4.0. You heard that right, kids. It's the 4.0. Join over 2 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with this exclusive offer for you. We're going to give you 20% off and free worldwide shipping with the code
Shout Out
at manscaped.com. Just type in the code Shout Out and the rest is smooth sailing. Imagine shaving with a sleek, well-designed and optimized trimmer that makes shaving time your favorite time in the bathroom. I'll tell you this, I'm one of the first people to try the new 4.0, and I'm blown away by the performance. The craftsmanship and details on the 4.0 are next level. The 4th-generation trimmer features a cutting-edge ceramic blade to reduce grooming accidents. That's right, kids. Advanced skin-safe technology. Now you can feel confident shaving those family jewels. Did I mention wireless charging? Men, if you've been shaving with the same nut trimmer on your face, you've been doing it wrong. No person wants to end up with pubes in their mouth. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code Shout Out at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code Shout Out. Unlock your confidence and always use the right tools for the job with Manscaped.
Shout Out.
Head on over to your local shop and ask for a Blood Wizard. If they're out, then you can tickety-tack on down to bloodwizard.com where you have all of your conjuring needs.
Hello, everybody. With just 4 days left till the Olympic opening ceremonies, it seems whether or not skateboarding should or should not be there will have to take a back seat to the big news headlines coming out of Japan.
This morning, with the Olympics just over a week away, Tokyo is setting the wrong kind of record.
Back in Tokyo, hundreds of athletes are now arriving each day. It's now clear that some of them will be carrying COVID.
What we're seeing is what we expected to see, essentially.
Pretty bummed about not being able to compete because I got COVID-19.
More trouble for the Tokyo Olympics.
Tennis star Coco Gauff is out of the Olympics. The 17-year-old phenom announced she tested positive for COVID right before she was about to head to Tokyo.
Female gymnast tested positive for COVID-19.
2 players and a coach for the South African men's football team have the virus.
About 60 COVID-19 infections have been linked to the Games 4 days before the opening ceremony.
The governor of Tokyo has told the BBC it would have been worse to cancel.
And Olympic officials remain determined to continue with tradition in whatever form.
Health leaders in Japan, they really want the Games to be canceled. They've been saying this for months now because cases are rising.
And the other issue these athletes have to contend with, intense heat. It's approaching 100 degrees here most days, which makes wearing a mask very uncomfortable for the athletes. The IOC's advice, drink more water.
What's up, it's Danny Boy, House of Pain, The Outsider's House, and you're listening to Talkin Schmit. And there's my alarm. Alexa, turn off the alarm.
It's cool, like tonight is the night.
Here we go again.
Just give it the old college try right now.
Big dog's in.
Schmitty.
96 times Schmitty.
Thanks, Schmitty.
We on? Schmitty.
Talkin Schmit.
That's called go to the hospital, bitch.
I'd be shitting my pants, man.
Your Rolodex is fucking deep.
It's about the one.
Who's this guy thinks he's tough shit?
What's up?
We're tastemakers.
Come on, Schmitty. What the fuck?
Let's hear it for Greg Swift. Yeah!
I'm sure this never gets old, but just like the prodigal son, I've returned with another guest. This one definitely came to get down. Please welcome to the show, Danny Boy.
Yo, I you know what? I've heard that before, but not quite on a podcast. So Hats off.
Hey, how's it going? You good?
Yep. And I get coffeeed up.
Coffee drinker, huh?
Yeah, same. I got the fucking little extra fucking caffeine going right now.
It's like my 7th shot.
You're in Oklahoma?
I'm in Tulsa, Oklahoma at the Mayo Hotel, where I currently live and have lived for the last 3 years since leaving California.
Okay.
Preemptively. Yeah.
We got in contact with one another through Keith Cochrane. How did you and Keith meet each other?
Shout out to Keith Cochrane. He's one of my favorite people on the planet. It's been a while since I've seen him. And you know what? It's funny because we met at an ASR trade show. I had never been to a trade show until I started going in the early 90s. And I went because I had a friend who did a brand called Fresh Jive, Rick Klotz. And I hung out with guys that hung out with him. And they'd be in his photo shoots and whatnot, basically modeling his clothing. And he was smart, similar to, Sean Stussy, where they were just catching kids at the right age that were really living the lifestyle, skating, surfing, clubbing, whatever it is, and just doing authentic, brand photo shoots. And so a lot of kids that when I moved to Hollywood, a lot of the kids were friends with Rick Klotz. And I actually, ironically, didn't know him then, but we went to the same high school, me and Rick Klotz. And actually, he's the first guy, this is all real time. He's the first guy I brought the Mickey's logo and said, listen, I need a House of Pain logo. And what I want to do is emulate this logo. Can you lay it out in Photoshop? Because nobody even had the computer to do that except for Rick on our block, who had moved to Hollywood at that point as well. And so when I started going to the trade shows, I ran into Keith through a mutual friend. I think he was dating a girl I knew back then. And we just hit it off. He felt like a long lost brother. He was I'm sure still is, or maybe isn't, I don't know. He was in the skateboarding business, and it had been a while since I was actually on a skateboard at that point. Grew up skating, coming from New York. Skateboarding was a new concept to me when I got here to LA. And I skated probably up until around high school era. And then I was just so immersed in the music and nightlife culture that I just there was no time for skating. And Keith was really on that second wave, I guess, because it kind of had died out in the early 90s. I'm sure that, people will disagree, but I'm saying it ain't what it is now. In the 90s, no. It was lean times. And he was one of those just lovable, likable characters that I hit it off with. And he ended up sending me a few decks and a few, he had, I think, Venture trucks and Think skateboards. Yep. And he sent us, he said, yeah, I'll take care of you. When I get back home to San Francisco, I'll send you a box. And I was like, sure he will. And sure as shit, he sent a few skateboards to me. And it was just fast friends from there. And then House of Pain at that time wasn't even really it was a thing, but it wasn't a thing. We didn't know that we would ever make a record and that the record would actually sell. And so when it did, we went up to, I think the first place that Jump Around ever went to number one was at, what is it, KMEL?
KMEL, yeah.
It's so, and it's ironic because we're native New Yorkers, both me and Everlast, and Lethal's from Latvia. Landed in New Jersey and then in Los Angeles. But what I'm saying is we were, native New Yorkers who then transplanted to California, but we were, an LA band, and we went number one first in San Francisco, second in New York, and then third in Los Angeles. So Los Angeles was like the last major city to embrace us, which is kind of ironic. Nevertheless, we would stay with Keith at his house on his couch. I think we stayed up there the first time we went up to San Francisco. And then we used to go to Hunters Point where his company was. And I can assure you this, people may not know this. In the 90s, if you got dropped off in Hunters Point and you try to get a cab out of there, cabs are like, you where? They would not come anywhere near that place because of the crack and heroin epidemic. It was just, you got stuck there if you went there, but there he was, doing his thing. And my love of San Francisco comes from hanging out with Keith and him showing me around that town. I didn't have any real, frame of mind. The only thing I knew about the San Francisco was the Haight-Ashbury, Jimmy videos and hippie videos I would see. So my first real introduction to the San Francisco scene was through Keith Cochrane. So I always love him. I always, he's one of the handful of people you meet in your lifetime where you're like, they stick with you. And so whenever I see him, it's like we never even, the time just disappears and we lock in right where we left off. So
solid human.
And now another first impression from Keith David Cochrane.
First Impressions by Keith Cochrane. My first impression of Danny Boy was probably 30 years ago. We were introduced from a mutual friend, and my first impression was what a solid dude he was. You don't meet a lot of people like that in your lifetime. It's a small, select group, and he was just a super solid dude. I'm stoked to have him as a friend, and stay gold, Danny Boy.
True or false, you guys drove around Pacifica together in an Acura singing Jump Around before it was even released.
True. And he probably fired up a few of those shots up in the air to celebrate. That's what I liked about Keith. And I hope I know he's a grown ass man now and he's got family and all that stuff. But he was like a I would say average size, good looking guy, but he was built like the rest of the tough guys were. Like he was a gentleman when needed to be, and then he could flip mode real quick and reach under the seat and let you know he's not to be fucked with. And I love that about him because we were built the same way. I'm 6'6", but I could be very cordial, but make no mistake, like if I don't like the way you're talking to me, you're trying to run some hustle, like you can get it quickly. And Keith always had that. I love that about him. He was like the greatest, he is the greatest guy in the world, but like you cross that line, he's not having it. And so he felt like a long lost brother. So absolutely. He was there from day one. He's one of the handful of people that like were there when it was still up in the, we had high hopes for all of our endeavors, but we never thought in a million years, that the same demo we're listening to in his Acura is a silver Acura too. Cause I remember it was a trek, you're going from San Francisco. He lived in like Pacifica. Yeah. So we'd have to drive. And I remember it being on like parallel to the water and then where he lived. And yeah, those were good times, man. I look at those are some of this is before it gets like business, this is before it gets like serious. This is before like, we go through the stratosphere with the first album, but it also is the beginning of the end of the innocence, that was just a couple of dudes trying to live their dreams day by day, minute by minute, authentic friendships, that kind of stuff. And then it gets to like business mode and, protocols and other things start to come into play. So when I think back, I remember having a foot race with Everlast on Keith's block and he beat me. And I was shocked because I back in the day, I'm a tall, lean, I'm gone. And I've been chased by many cops back in the day and always got away. And Everlast was actually faster than me, and we were competitive like that even back then. But I just laugh. When's the last time you could say like you ran a foot race? Like with the homie back in the day, those days are long gone. And so I remember being in San Francisco fondly. I also remember right as everybody was bubbling, the records had just come out. We were in a corner unit. I think this kid Warren, Keith had friends that lived close to the Haight-Ashbury, like really close. And they had a corner unit, and it almost had like what looks like like a watchtower at a prison or something. It was just like a rounded. It was an apartment building, first floor with a kitchen like rotunda. I don't even know if that's a word. And he was playing break beats, and B Real started freestyling. Everlast started freestyling. I started rhyming. We were just basically rhyming records that you hadn't heard out yet, and we had like 250 people in the street wilding out at the corner. San Francisco was live at that time, man. I think that's before like you guys had a Stussy store up there. Maybe it had just got there at that point. Maybe it had been there for a couple of years prior to that, but it was still like the skate scene was just starting to find its way back. It was lovely times, man. Unlike things of today, those days are long gone. But I will always remember that era as such a wonderful time to be alive.
So did you meet Everlast in New York or not till you moved to LA?
No, I met him. We lived in the same neighborhood and we went to, back in those days in the San Fernando Valley, which is like suburbia. If you're into hip hop early on, there's a handful of white guys in the room with you and you see the same same usual suspects at every jam, And so it was really quick. Back in the day, it was like three notable dudes: Everlast, DJ Epic, from most notably people know him from Crazy Town, but he had produced in high school. He was producing Belle Biv DeVoe and MC Search solo records, and him and Everlast were already making like real moves in high school record wise, and so there was a few other kids that didn't really that were popping back then, but you wouldn't know who they were now. So yeah, it wasn't hard for me to, we ran in the same circles, and we were both B-boys at a time where very few white kids were B-boys. And then very few of those B-boys were out, like peacocking, if you will, like with their chest out at the jams. Cause this is when there was a lot of 80s was still a lot of Bloods and Crips coming in the Valley to these, roller skating rinks that were no longer roller skating rinks, but they were only a place that you could have a hip hop show. So they were always in the one that comes to mind is Sherman Square Roller Rink, right across from the Country Club in Reseda. At that time, I mean, it was gang. The color shit was real. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we stuck out like sore thumbs being white dudes. So you really had to be thorough back then. It ain't like today where everybody can just, I see kids and their families walking through malls with Ramones shirts on and Suicidal Tendencies there. It's like they used to spit down from the top level of the mall, calling us fags or calling us derogatory words that were and it was a rite of passage. We'll take whatever, if you say it to me, it's a problem. We'll fight. But how can I do anything if someone throws something off the, just because the status quo was rock and roll if you're a white guy. And if you were into punk rock or if you were into hip hop or you were anything besides rock and roll, it could be problematic. And it was a rite of passage, And so, again, a different world. And so Eric was not hard to spot. And it wasn't, I recently had a conversation with somebody else about that. And we did a show. He did a show at the Key Club. Maybe it feels like just yesterday, but maybe 5 or 6 years ago, where he went through all of his career and they were filming it. So he brought out somebody from every era. And, we did the House of Pain thing, and he introduced me as his first fan. And it made me feel some type of a way. Maybe it was a little ego on my part, but I was like, first fan, I feel like, I'm the first dude that we connected, that we made a record that actually sold, you know what I mean? But then I'm looking back in my humility, and I'm like, you know what? I probably was the first fan. I'm not saying he didn't have other fans, but I was the first fan that actually said, "Hey, I love what you do. I think we can do other shit even better."
Right.
And I always was enamored by his ability to write rhymes and all of it. I mean, I was just talking to someone else about something, and we were talking about graffiti. I still got sketches that Everlast did from, back in the high school days. And he was nice with it. There's no way to, and I never take that from him in that way. So yeah, we got together at a time where the Rhyme Syndicate stuff that he had just didn't find its audience. And he was left, trying to figure out what the next look was. Uh-huh. And originally House of Pain started off as like a band. We had a few dudes from another band. And nobody was trying to hear that. This was 89, 90, no record label was trying to hear that you're either a rock band or a band or you're a hip hop act. You're not a band hip hop act. There was not only no interest in that, I think they were like, even if you try to present that, they're like, stop. We don't even know how to put that to radio. We don't even know how to package that. Like, stop. Like they're either in the hip hop world or they're in the rock world, And so we quickly lost the band and made a few demos with a few producers until we ended up doing work with Muggs. And that's all Eric, that's Eric's, friendship with Muggs from 7A3 and Rhyme Syndicate days. But we definitely did 2 rounds of demos. We did one with a guy named Danny Saber. And then we did a second round with QD3, Quincy Jones's son.
Oh, damn.
And then we finally ended up doing the third batch with Muggs, and that was the perfect fit of those beats with the style that we had,
right?
And, that Eric spitting the way he spit and the Irish shit that I brought, and Muggs's tracks was the perfect fit. Prior to those two, I'm saying from my point of view that the QD3 tracks were dope, but they sounded like the work he was doing for LL Cool J on whatever it was, 17 shots to the dome. It had a little R&B flavor to it. It just wasn't hard enough. And the Danny Saber stuff was a little too bluesy, rocky, you got to find that perfect fit, and Muggs was the perfect fit. So.
Well, this was like the party anthem. I mean, Cypress Hill was huge, right? Like they were very instrumental in the beginning. I mean, Muggs came and probably connected all you guys. Is that right or no?
No, I mean, Eric knew him from 783. So 783 was a band that Muggs was DJing in on. They were signed to Rhyme Syndicate as well, I think. And so they had already, they'd already known each other. You got to remember, though, too, the Cypress Hill record was out for 6 months and it didn't make any noise. And then finally they went back in and shot Killer Man video. And then all of a sudden it clicked for everybody, like, oh shit, this is like incredible stuff. We were on it like that, but they were already, from my recollection, I guess it's going back almost 30 years now, which is bonkers to think about that. But
so crazy.
I remember hearing that they were going to go back after 6 months of just like the record not popping and do a Spanish version of the record to try to appeal to a different audience when it started to blow up again. So their record was out. It took off a little slower than they anticipated, but once it caught fire, I mean, it was the biggest record on the planet. And ours, the 6 months of inactivity of their record was when we made ours. And so simultaneously, both these records were blowing up, and they mutually like benefited each other, because if you weren't ready for Cypress Hill's trip, House of Pain would get you set up to go on that trip. And if you love Cypress Hill, you're like, what else is in that wheelhouse? Oh shit, here's these Irish dudes doing this. Right. So it was great. It was symbiotic in the way that it was, both of us were motivating back and forth to, on our way up. So
yeah, and then you guys toured together and shit too, right?
Yeah, the Soul Assassins tours were those were all sold out dates, man.
That must have been insane.
Yeah, in that time, in that era, I mean, yeah, it was good stuff. So I have nothing but good memories about all that shit. But unfortunately, all that stuff came to an abrupt end a few years later. The seriousness came in, by year 2. And by the second record, I was checked out anyway, as far as like, I could feel that this thing was like going in a completely different direction. And so was my friendship with Everlast. It was just, there's 2 sides there's 3 sides, actually, his side, my side, and the truth, depending on how you're looking at this thing, but, from my point of view, I just felt like I didn't think he once we got where we needed to get from the first record, he was like, all right, I got it from here. You guys, I'll call you when I need you, which was not at all. And so I felt like after that, my input wasn't really, except for an artwork and album titling, that was about the extent of what I did. And just doing hype man shit. But I felt at a certain point, there was just like, he was just going to do what he wanted to do. He didn't care what we wanted to do. It was a democracy. And then it turned into a dictatorship. And I'm sure every band in the world probably has, most of them have been through this and then some. But for me, I was like, yeah, it was very clear from the start how we were going to split things up, how we were going to do things. And as soon as it was a success, that those slowly started to erode to basically like, this is what we're doing. If you don't like it, screw. And, I put up with a lot more of that stuff in my mind than I should have. And for, I'm sure selfish reasons. It's selfish in the sense that like, look, I helped build this thing, and I feel like I'm entitled to get what's coming to me. So if that means getting a little smaller to accommodate you needing more, then I'm willing to do it to a certain point. But there's a certain point where you're just like, bro, now you're getting a little out of line. Right. And so it got to that point, and I just, and then again, I in that era, I was a live one, and I probably was not easy to get along with or not easy to be around. I was always always pranking and playing jokes and fucking around and, drinking a lot.
I mean, you guys are partying hard right then, right?
I was drinking, and then I started doing drugs. He was never really doing drugs. And, he went through a phase with religion and all this stuff. So he was on some other trip. And I was just like, dude, I'm going to continue to be Irish. I'm going to continue to drink, fight, and fuck. So, good luck with what you're doing. I probably, looking back, could have been a little bit more sensitive to his, his spiritual journey or whatever he was on. But at that, when I'm young, immature, and I'm just like, yo, bro, like, last time I checked, we're trying to do this thing over here. You know what I mean? And now you're over here, and I'm not invited, and I'm not even interested in any of that shit. I'm not interested in you know, this just the shit he was on, you know what I mean? And that being the religion of his choice. I wasn't into any religion at that point. You know what I mean? Or even at this point, that's not my, you know, like that's everybody's personal journey. But when the music starts to reflect that and the vibe starts to reflect that, it kind of alienated everybody else because we're not on it like that. So at least for me, I'll speak for myself, wasn't on it like that. So it just was, you know, it was just getting away from where we started. And again, it is what it is. We're talking. A big reason of why me and you are talking today is from the record we made back then. So I understand, you know, it'll be something that I'll always have to talk about as long as there's an interest to talk about it. And I don't ever mind talking about it, but it is one of those things, man. It was a great ride. I still have lifelong friendships going back to those days. This is also a testament to that because Keith is the reason why, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're hooking up, and I would never change a thing because it got me to where I am now. Where I am now is in a place where, you know, looking back, there's some pain, but there's also a lot of joy, and there's way more joy than there ever was the painful part. But if I had a kid, which I don't, and he wanted to go into the record business or the hip hop business, I'd be like, you know, you know, have a plan B, you know, and then maybe have some other skills. To my own detriment, I didn't have a plan B. I never thought it was going to come to an end. And unfortunately, I believed in some of the bullshit I was, you know, telling myself, and a lot of the shit that I was getting from hip hop, which is, if this doesn't work out, I'll always go back to street life, and that'll always be there for me. And technically, that was always there for me, but that's foolish at best. And again, you know, I love my freedom too much, but I spent a long time, you know, doing ridiculous stuff after House of Pain to try to make ends meet. And that includes selling drugs and using drugs and manufacturing drugs and taking penitentiary chances, because a lot of ego involved in that too. You know, how do I go from House of Pain to working at Starbucks? You know, there's nothing wrong with working at Starbucks, actually.
Get me a cafe latte.
Any, you know, job that's a real job, it's honorable to take that job. But what I did was, you know, my ego was up here, my self-esteem was on the floor, and I get paralyzed by that. And so I just go, fuck it. I'm just going to start self-medicating. And then in order to stay self-medicated, I'm going to start selling the same stuff I'm using so that I can continue to do what I'm doing. And I spent almost a decade in and out of, you know, drug addiction and alcoholism before I was, you know, able to get sober.
To get through it. Fuck. Yeah, it's a whirlwind. It seems like Keith mentioned that you may or may not have celebrated one of your birthdays right off Melrose with the likes of Guns N' Roses, Mickey Rourke, and some A-listers as maybe a possible party highlight.
Hello, my friend!
Growing up in Hollywood in that era, that was every night. I mean, you didn't have to wait for a birthday for that shit. And that's part of the problem. And that was part of, I think, Everlast's problem with me was that I was doing all of that extracurricular shit visibly with all of those type of dudes on the regular. There were certain things, there was like some protocol and, you know, a lot of them were, you know, those unwritten laws, but like I was out there wilding every night. I mean, that was, and I think it offended a lot of the dudes in my peripheral circle who were a lot more reserved and they were stoners and I was an alcoholic. Like, dude, if there's two different vibes, I'm out there like fighting and fucking wilding and these dudes are smoking dope, playing video games, writing rhymes. It's like, dude, I've never professed to be an MC. You know, I'm a hype man. I'm a fucking visionary. I'm a creative director. I'm the backbone of like, when you walk in a room and the dudes are looking at you funny, I got you. You know what I mean? Like we can deal with these dudes. And then as you get on and you do your thing and you don't need all of that. So you're like, you know, whatever. But bro, that every night in Hollywood at that era was kind of like that because those people, everybody still lived in Hollywood. Nobody lives in Hollywood.
Yeah.
You get money in Hollywood, you get the fuck out of there. You get the fuck out of California.
Yeah.
But you definitely don't live in Hollywood anymore. Nobody lives in Hollywood anymore. You wouldn't want to.
Malibu.
Homeless people live in Hollywood. You know what I mean?
San Francisco's looking that way too.
I know. I don't want to say it, but I mean, I wouldn't, you know what? I feel like, you know, I came here in Tulsa 3 years ago and I didn't leave because I never imagined myself leaving California. But in hindsight, I'm like, that's like God doing for me what I couldn't do for myself. I came here, found a new life. And then every time I go back to California, it's crazy to me. It looks like They Live, the John Carpenter classic.
I have come here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum.
It's like 10 cities, every underpass has like not only a homeless population, they're decorating down there. They're like openly defecating and it's like, bro, it's like they like, I don't know what it's like. It's crazy, bro. It's crazy. So ironically enough, I experienced homelessness at the end of my using. My father was homeless when he was murdered. If there's a number one fear in my life, I always have a healthy fear of homelessness for myself. And I know that nothing ensures that I don't become homeless more than my sobriety, because for me, it would be mental illness and treating it with drugs and alcohol. Yeah. And as long as I stay sober, my chances go through the roof that won't happen. I don't know that a lot of people are homeless strictly because of economics. That's obviously a factor, but and maybe I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But it's usually a combination of mental illness and treating that mental illness with street pharmaceuticals. Yeah. And institutionalized mentality when there's no institution that wants you. If you're really not like a criminal, but you don't mind going out and living under the freeway underpass, wilding out. I mean, so, and politics play a big thing into that as well. So, absolutely. But that's always been a fear of mine, and it will continue to be. It's my motivation why I stay sober a lot of the times, and it's also a motivation to keep working, and also save some of what I make, because I never want to end up in that situation. There's no worse feeling than I was faux homeless. I was living in a warehouse with very little possessions in my life, very little mental faculties in check, and godless and hopeless. And that's a terrible place to be. And again, I wouldn't wish that on anybody. Right. And I only know that how I prevent that is by staying sober, which is, a great deal for me.
How long has that been that you've been sober? Like 15 years or something, right?
Yeah, I celebrated 16 years consecutively sober on April 15th on tax day, which is ironic. And it's not my first time. I had 3.5 when I thought, man, you know what? Drugs was my problem, but drinking can't be my problem. I'm Irish. There's no way. And so I thought, well, I'll just have a drink and I'll stay away from methamphetamines and I should be fine. And within 72 hours of having that drink, I realized that the drink was not what I was after. It was not going to get me where I needed to go. And I was right back on meth. And it took about 3 years of downward spiral. I ended up in that warehouse, and I'm grateful that I ended up in that warehouse. I ended up in that warehouse. Ironically, it belonged to a friend of mine's parents. But I met this guy. He was the product manager at Adidas. So while we were on top of the world, Ole Ostergaard, shout out to him. He really saved my life in that way. He was if you were popping, you were Sly Stallone or Eddie Murphy or Cypress Hill or House of Pain or whoever, name your favorite band in that era, you go to Ole, and Ole would bless you with Adidas, whatever, he'd lace you head to toe for your tours, whatever. So I was always cool with Ole. It wasn't even like we were best friends. And a mutual friend of mine, Sean B., he hooked me up with Ole. He was working with Ole. And when I started to downward spiral, ended up homeless, Sean actually let me in there and Ole approved it. But they took a real risk of me living in, there was a bathroom and there was a couch, and I lived in their warehouse filled with energy drinks and weird. They had a bar business, and I wasn't even drinking at that point. But I wasn't interested in their stuff because I was on methamphetamine. So, but I never put my head on the cement in that way. So I was faux homeless. Basically, I lived on a couch in a warehouse. But believe me, it's as close as homeless as I've ever got. And I never want to get that point again. But every time they celebrate their birthdays, I'm always like, man, these guys saved my life, man. It's always a reminder when I see, milestones on Facebook of both these gentlemen, because if it wasn't for them, who knows where I would have been? You know what I mean? I was at that point, and
right.
Where both homicide and suicide felt like viable options. I've been pondering both for a long time, just in two different ways. So.
Did that draw you to Oklahoma? Like, what drew you to Oklahoma?
No. So I get sober 16 years ago. Prior to getting sober, I had met some people that I met this kid Slane in Boston, who was an incredible MC. He wanted me to help him. I'm like, bro, how can I help you? Like, I don't rhyme. I'm not even interested in this shit anymore. But I was so taken back by his skill sets and his style. and he was clearly influenced by House of Pain. And I was like, yo, like, I'll do what I can. So I had a friendship with him, and then I fell in love with what he was doing. So I tried to champion him. I brought him to Lethal at the time, and Lethal had a deal with Geffen. He had a record deal in place so he could produce records, and he had another kid. So I had 2 kids and he had 1 kid, and we were trying to champion all 3 of these dudes. And we're like, instead of making 3 records, maybe we could make 1 record. And I thought, well, let me package this and let me help them with this. And we ended up, making a few demos and calling it La Coca Nostra. And then Ill Bill from Nonfiction came on board. And then in the end, Everlast joined the group, which was also crazy. And, we turned that group into something. And it was on that first tour in 2009 that it brought us to Tulsa, Oklahoma. I don't think we had ever come through here with House of Pain. And so I didn't know anything about Tulsa except for it seemed familiar to me. And it was weird that it seemed familiar that a place I had never been was like striking such a chord with me. And then it occurred to me like, oh my God, I think The Outsiders was filmed here. I think this is where the author's from. And then she wrote the book about this place. Cause I kind of got that from just the vibe here. And sure enough, I looked it up. I was like, oh fuck, this is really where it's from. I was a huge fan. I mean, I grew up, I seen that movie at 13 and its theatrical release in 83. And I was like, this is like my life in a different era, but with just as cool guys. Basically, I come from a broken home. I'm a latchkey kid. And the family that I don't have behind these doors where I live, I'm going to make out there. And I did with how we do it. This was the appeal to hip hop early on for me. It was cruise. And it was like, if you're in the rock, you spend 9 hours in your room trying to learn your pentatonic scales on a guitar isolated. If you're in a hip hop, you're out there breaking and graffitiing and rhyming with a crew, with dudes, with like your peoples. And it's like a family. That's why I like gangs. I like bike clubs. I like all of that shit, that brotherhood stuff. And so that movie was like the first one that was like, at a 13-year-old mind, that was still like cool enough for me to go like, dude, if this is the best life ever gets, running around the streets with the likes of like Dallas Winston and those type of dudes, rocking denim jackets, smoking and sneaking into the drive-in, I can live with that. That'll be cool. And ironically, tonight I'm going to the drive-in that was used in the movie. They're celebrating their 70th anniversary and they're showing The Outsiders tonight. Yes. So I'm going to sneak in that hole that's still there, and then I will get in my car that I've already pre-parked in there. But make no mistake, I'm doing both. I have never seen The Outsiders there. I've been to that. I've taken many people through there to see it as a location, but I have never been here when they showed The Outsiders for many different reasons. I was always out of town when they did that. So tonight is the night. So I'm very excited to take my missus and go check out The Outsiders for the umpteenth million time at the Admiral Twin Drive-In Theater. So that's what amazing. I came here on tour. I realized that it was filmed here. I went looking for locations. I found the drive-in, the park that Johnny kills the Soch in, and the house. And it took 5 years for me to really get good grip on what was going on here. I started a hobby behind finding this house after posting the photo to Instagram to Facebook. I started getting all kinds of questions about, dude, where are you? I can't believe that house is real. What the fuck? And so every stop on the tour, I would go looking for pop culture locations, post a before and after photo, put the intel on there. And this hobby began like this, it made another crew. And I've got about 50 people that are online that actively go looking for any type of pop culture locations under the Delta Bravo Urban Exploration Team banner. And you can find it on Facebook, on Instagram. And that's what we do for a hobby. You'll be like, oh, LL Cool J's Bad album, but where was that photo taken? And I will find out, okay, that's his high school, or I will contact the photographer. And he's like, man, I think we took that over here. And then we go out when we're in that area and we look for it and we match it up. And this is what we do. And it all started here at the Outsiders house. So after about 5 years of going back and forth on tours and road trips, I'd always make a beeline back for Tulsa, Oklahoma. And at year 5, it was clear to me that if I came back year 6, the house probably wouldn't be still standing because they were tearing down the side of town. It's in North Tulsa, which is like a low economic, downtrodden side of town. And Habitat for Humanities was coming through there, buying up all the derelict homes, tearing them down and putting their homes there. And I thought, that's awesome, but it wouldn't be awesome if they did not recognize that this is a national treasure and they shouldn't be tearing it down. And I started to really worry about it. So finally I got involved and we were able to find the owner, and I made her an offer. And before long, I was the owner of the house. And I realized once I got here, I bought it sight unseen. I'd been outside of it before, but I'd never been inside the house. once I got inside the house, I realized I had bitten off more than I could chew. And even though I only paid 15 grand for the house, which is incredible, there was about $150,000 worth of work that needed to happen to make this thing even, visitable. And so I thought, well, shit, I'm going to turn this into a museum, me and my one poster and my big idea. And I asked for help. And I often talk to kids. I just talked last week to a Catholic school of kids. And I said, you know what? I used to be terrified to ask for help. And I said, it almost killed me. And I said, part of it's ego and part of it's just fear of, not knowing what to do and being scared to tell you that I don't know what to do. And I said, I hope you never let that get in your way, because it took me almost 50 years to learn how to ask for help. And now I have no problem. If I have a valid reason to need the help, I ask for it. There's no shame in that. Influence somebody. For years, I thought that was a shameful thing to do or an embarrassing to do. Like, dude, you don't know how to do drywall? I mean, one dude would say, hey, grab that drywall. And then the other guy would go, grab some sheetrock. And I'm like, so which one? I didn't even know that there was a difference and what. So finally it's laughable. I'm like, dude, I don't know what the fuck you guys are asking me for. Just tell me what it is and where to get it, and I'll figure a way to get it. So I'm good at getting things. I'm good at collecting things, and I'm good at getting people to support and rally around things that I love. And that's what I did with House of Pain. That's what I've done with La Coca Nostra. That's one of the 20 other projects. And that's what I do with The Outsider's House. I love it. I explain to you why I love it. And if you feel the same way I do, I have a plan to figure out another way to save it. Are you with me? Or are you not? And if you ain't, high five and, have a nice one. And if you are, here's what I want to do. Let's figure out how we can get it done. And so collectively, I've been able to do a lot of cool stuff. But this one is more special than anything else. I mean, House of Pain is what got me here, as far as like why they're still interested to talk to me about, anything prior to, 5 years, all the way back to the 90s. But anything from the last 5 years forward, it has nothing to do with anything except for the Outsider's House Museum. When I walk down the street here, nobody goes, hey, there's that dude from House of Pain. They're always like, hey, there's that Outsider's House Museum guy. So for me, it's a great title. It's what I love to do. And I'm of service, man. I prayed for a new life when I got sober. And I think the first time when I got sober and got the 3.5 years, I secretly wanted back my old life. And my old life is what ended me up in a 12-step program in the first place. And so I get sober and I try to recreate my old life, which failed in the first place. So I had to learn that hard lesson. This time I got sober and all I wanted was a new life, anything but what I had. And so while I dabbled in La Coca Nostra and House of Pain tours and records, and had a good time doing it in certain, instances, especially La Coca. But I mean, it's just not me anymore. It's what I do moving forward is I'm the gatekeeper and the groundskeeper at this house called the Outsider's House Museum. It is the actual house from the film by Francis Ford Coppola, based on the novel by S.E. Hinton. It's a required reading to most 7th and 8th grade classes in America and in the world, actually. The author is still alive. She wrote that book at 15 and a half. She single-handedly started a young adult. Yeah, she wrote it. She was failing English and got a D+ in creative writing. It's never been out of print in 52 years. It sold more on the 50th anniversary than all the years combined, which is like mind-blowing. And she creates a category. So I'm a hip hop guy. I can't tell you what the first hip hop record was. I know it's debatable. I'm a rock guy, like everybody else. What's the first rock record? It's debatable. I mean, is it Robert Johnson or is it, we can't debate the young adult book category. And what that means is the first time in recorded history that's a young adult wrote about being a young adult for young adults was S.E. Hinton at 15 and a half at Will Rogers High School here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. She followed that book up 5 years later after having writer's block with Rumblefish. Coppola also bought that and wrote and did the movie behind that here as well. And Tex was next, and Tex was also turned into a movie by Disney first before The Outsiders was. And then there was That Was Then, This Is Now, which was also turned into a movie by Emilio Estevez and his father.
Damn.
All to various degrees of success, but none greater than The Outsiders.
Yeah.
And my job is to tell those stories and to encourage people to find their voice, or to realize that she wrote these books at 15 and a half, failing English with a D+ in creative writing, and still she persisted and still she, achieved. And nobody had told me those facts as a kid. I thought you had to be perfect, and I thought you had to have, all the breaks to do stuff. And The Outsiders is the perfect story, really talking about the haves and the have-nots and the beauty of being from two different parts of town and still agreeing that you see the same sunset, and what a beautiful starting place that could be for anybody, whether you are black, white, pinstripe, Republican, Democrat, Jew, Arab, whatever you think. There's so much strife in the world. And if we could start with just, hey, dude, let's start here with the sunset and agree that this is a beautiful thing that we're both seeing no matter where in the world we are. Can we agree on that and move forward together? And for me, it's as simple as that. I know it's a complicated world, but sometimes it could be as simple as that. Like, it's a starting point. And for years, I didn't have a touchstone and a guiding, my true north. And for me, it's this. And all I do is show up and make sure that this thing runs how it's supposed to run. I get volunteer help from so many incredible people here in Tulsa. This museum got built not for me. I was silly enough to buy it, dream big, and get the ball rolling. But I mean, I had help from the people who gave me the most were the people with the least to give. And what that looks like is people driving by saying, your lawn is up to my waist. And me and my daughter will come cut that lawn after her soccer practice on Sunday. It's the only time we have, but we would love to do it. Can we do that? I said, absolutely, you can. Or, hey, man, I'm in the roofing thing. And I know that if you're not careful, that tree is going to fall and break through your roof and you're going to have a real problem. So I'm going to introduce you to a tree cutting guy, and he'll probably do it cheap. And then when I start to talk, he's like, you know what, fuck it, I'm just going to do it for you. And so many mitzvahs, so many good acts of paying it forward, get this thing done. At the top of the food chain, S.C. Hinton is the author, is the number one benefactor and cash giver to the project. I don't know how to say that.
Right.
Jack White gave us $30,000 after doing a show here, and he loves Tulsa and he loves the Outsiders. And he's like, dude, you're 30,000 from your goal. I want to get you to your goal. I want to give you 30,000 from last night's show. I mean, my mind
That's
almost
amazing.
blown. I'm a number one Billy Idol fan since I'm a kid. Billy Idol gave me a nice check. So it was like, he said, Danny, how you like in Tulsa and how's the house coming? I'm like, I love Tulsa. And what house? I didn't even know he knew. He was like, the Outsiders house, mate. I go, oh, fuck, He was like, yeah. He goes, I want to give you a little something. I said, you do? He says, I don't want to give you what Jack White gave you, but I want to give you a little something. I said, Billy, I'll take what I can get and love it. And he gave me a check.
That's amazing. Did any of that cast help out?
Yeah. C. Thomas Howell gave us his Heroes hoodie that he wore. Ralph Macchio gave us sneakers that he wore. Yeah. Ralph kept one of everything from every movie, and he kept his sneakers.
Dude, that's sick.
Rob Lowe came by. Everybody's done something. They've autographed stuff that we auctioned off. They've come by and supported. We're doing an event in August. C. Thomas Howell, Tommy Howell plays guitar and is a singer-songwriter. And we're going to have a yard, him play his show on the lawn and also tell stories. But we sold it out, 150 people at $75 a head, sold out in like 3 days, 2 shows. So it's like the demand is high here for anything Outsiders. It is really the string and the thread that connects this community together. And it is a beautiful place to live, especially in all of these crazy times that we live now. It's a simpler slice of America, and the opportunity is unlimited here if you're creative. I remember years ago, I said this often, and I don't know how that works in San Francisco. Maybe once you go over the Golden Gate Bridge or whatever the bridge that connects like Oakland to San Francisco, like the dream is always to get to San Francisco and see if for me, and growing up in LA, you grew up in the San Fernando Valley. And then if you could get over to Hollywood and make it stick, you had a good chance. They always said that the odds were good, but the goods were odd. But if you were a poet or an actor or a dancer or whatever, you had a good chance of, getting it to go. There was opportunity for you there. And New York was no different. I don't see that anymore. Every time I go back to LA, it feels more and more like a Vegas version of it. It feels like being on the Sunset Strip feels like being on some strip in Vegas where everything is like, $1 million luxury condos. And it's all touristy bullshit. And I don't know that you could have that bohemian lifestyle where you can get affordable apartments in an area that, like Melrose. We used to pay, it wasn't cheap, but it wasn't like, it wasn't going to kill you to get an apartment there. It was doable. And there were other areas that were even more affordable. Echo Park and Silver Lake and all of the, there were like little bohemian, like little vibes that you could get and still become an actor or a writer or an artist or comedian or whatever if you were an entertainer or a creative, it was a hotbed for all of those dudes, and now where is that? Maybe I'm just getting old, but I can tell you what, between the taxes, the red tape, trying to do business in California, the cost of living is through the roof. I can't deal with the politics. I can't deal with them not dealing with the homeless crisis.
Yeah, same.
I just don't know what, I love the beach like everybody else, but I never went to the beach when I was in LA. I literally never went to the beach. I rode my motorcycle up PCH on the weekends, never went to the beach. And it's nice to have the beach. It's nice to be an hour away from any ski, snowboarding, but I don't snowboard.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's like having options that you can't employ or you don't use anyway. So I would love it if Tulsa had a beach, but other than that, I don't miss for anything. I don't want for anything. Everything I want is here. So.
Okay, sick. We just watched the movie last night. I'm assuming you knew this, but Essie is in the movie with a cameo. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still trying to get her to give me that nurse's outfit, and she still has it in her personal collection. And I'm hoping one day to take the collection that I have. So my collection is now, I have the largest collection of Outsiders memorabilia from the movie or books from all. It's been translated in over 33 languages. I have books from all over the planet, all different eras. And now my collection is into Rumblefish and Tex as well. So I've got behind me, I've got all of Matt Dillon's wardrobe from Rumblefish, minus his leather jacket, the leather gauntlet, and the bandana. I know Essie Hinton has the bandana still, so there's a good chance. But I need to build a museum from scratch instead of the one we built is organic. It's authentic. It's the house from the movie, and it doubles as the museum that holds the collection of Outsider stuff. If that makes sense, it's a museum in an artifact itself. My plan moving forward is to build a whole new, completely from scratch museum where it'd be more immersive and interactive for kids.
Yeah.
And then to explain to them how important this little girl was and is, and why you as a little boy or little girl could also be as impactful if you find your voice and you don't let whatever the things that, being a D+ student in that semester or that year didn't stop her from doing what she had to do to tell her story. Mm-hmm. And so it's an educational museum with a lot of Hollywood names and cool people attached to it. I mean, don't forget, Stuart Copeland did the soundtrack. It was the first soundtrack he'd ever worked on. And it ends him up in a career doing mostly soundtracks and scores now. And so Stuart Copeland was here at the height of his police fame, playing his drums under the bridge while Mickey Rourke and Matt Dillon were acting out scenes just to get the cadence and the vibe down. So, and Coppola did both of the movies that I love, Rumblefish and The Outsiders here. So there's Coppola's hand in it. All of those actors, the Brat Pack, I mean, they're still relevant today. I mean, the reboot of The Karate Kid with Ralph Macchio is bigger than it's ever been. C. Thomas Howell still doing his thing. Rob Lowe still doing his thing.
That cast is all time, right? It's like,
Tom
we were
Cruise
like, what
doing
the
his
fuck?
thing. Diane Lane still doing his thing. I mean, and so it just keeps on keeping on. And now there's a Broadway musical in the works.
Oh, shit.
And possibly other TV things that they're talking about. So, and even if all of that dries up, which it won't, there's never a shortage of seventh graders rediscovering the story year after year who cannot wait to come to the house. They see the movie. They probably see it at the Circle Cinema where it was filmed or at the drive-in tonight. And the next stop would be the Outsiders House Museum where they get their mind blown. I mean, growing up, the only thing similar would have been to go to the Willy Wonka's Chocolate Factory when I was a kid that would kind of match that experience that we provide them here. And we do it for $10. And so, I mean, you can't beat it. And so,
yeah. So what does that entail? Like you can go inside and then you have it.
We redid every room that was in the movie to look like the room when the movie was filmed. So it's a lot of smoke and mirrors. It's a lot of faux finishing and artists who came in and made the walls and the paint and the everything looks like you walked into a set of the movie. It's in the actual room that it was filmed. We found a similar couch, a similar end tables. We built it back to spec. And then the rooms that weren't featured in it have all the collection in it. And then there's something behind it that have our gift shop, more of an exhibition space, the facility, bathroom facilities and all that stuff. So it's 2-part. And so all the iconic stuff from the movie is in there. We have, again, tons of wardrobe. We have books from all over the planet. I've got photos. I've got, it's just, you have to see it to believe. I bought that house. I had no plan, no more money to spend. And I had one poster, one Outsiders poster. And if I put a feather in my cap for any reason, it's because I was able to collect, starting from a kid baseball card collecting to being a b-boy. Back in the day, if you were a hip hop head in the 80s, you had to go find that shit. You couldn't go online. There was no online. You had to go to the swap meet to find a Kangol, and Cazelles were over here, and Puma Clydes were on this side of town. And if you were, and the records were over here, it was a scavenger hunt. So I take that same, motivation and I do it to anything I do, but the internet makes it that much more easier, and, having the budget to do it. But I go preemptively looking in places where other people don't look, and I've been able to amass an incredible collection. And I also reach out to people who were in the movie and people who worked on the movie, and I tell them what I'm doing and what I'm looking for, and you'd be surprised if nobody goes as deep as I do in that area. But I reached out to people that work with the people, and then they tell those people, hey, he's looking for this stuff, and you end up getting gems that are Smithsonian worthy. So
nice, dude. That's incredible. Fuck,
and an incredible trip for me too, man. It's been a rebirth and a redemption story, man. I didn't want my story to end with just House of Pain and then he gets sober. Those are great things, and most people never get those things. And so I don't look at those with like contempt. I just go, there's got to be more that I can do, because and I'm not looking to get. I'm looking just to live and to give. You know what I mean? And to do something that people like. It's worthy of their, of their attention. And so I found it. And I couldn't have found a better thing that suits me better and makes me of maximum service, yet it pays dividends to me in the same thing. And that's the secret for me, is to do what I love. And I don't feel like I work a day in my life. People love what I do, and I love what I do. And so there's no, everything just works out the way it's supposed to. And so I'm very happy with all of this,
Well, I found out about all this. Interesting enough, I was interviewing Wee Man, and he said he bought a van out in, I forget where, but he drove to Matt Hoffman's, and then Matt Hoffman was like, you got to go to fucking Danny Boy just bought this house. And he pulls up and
Absolutely.
He's like, Thomas Howell's there, the mayor's there. They're like, and he's like, what?
Hell yeah, it was great. People couldn't believe it. He was there and shit. It was great. And, he was a sport. I remember that he bought a Sprinter van, like one of those really cool, like you could live in the jump off.
Yeah.
And he shocked the crowd.
Whoa, slow it down.
We've had a lot of exciting guests, man, that come out of the blue, and I had Greg Brady last month come through.
Far out.
Tito Jackson came through a couple of years back. I've had, from Jack White to Nashville Pussy to all the bands that come through playing. They all want to see it.
For
so
sure.
I always have to stay on the radio. Hey man, so-and-so's in town. We want to pop on by, and it's Tuesday at 3:00, and I just got in from wherever, and I'm like, all right, I'll be right over, and I show them. And so the fan base for this thing is like, it's insane, because it's, it's so multi-generational. Little kids like it, and people who worked on the film are still coming by, in their 70s.
And do you guys offer tours or like maps or something of some of the other stuff in the movie?
We have it online. So there's theoutsidershouse.com, and you can find that there. We used to do a bus tour, and then COVID kind of knocked the wheels off that, all pun intended. We still have the bus, but it was just a lot of, clerically speaking, it was a lot of like moving parts, and it was just like scheduling it and how to schedule it, and then the bus to pick you up at the hotel and finding the drivers, and it just, and it was, locals didn't want it because they know where all these spots are. And if they didn't, they just want to know where they are. They'll go see them themselves in the comfort of their own car. And then we don't have that kind of tourism here. It's growing, but it's seasonal. And so, Tulsa is not like, I couldn't keep the buses every weekend. Sometimes there was 2 people on a day on one of the tours. It doesn't pay for itself. And sometimes it was overpacked everybody wanted to do the 3:00 tour. And I could only fit 14 people on the bus, because anything over that is like a CDC license or CDL license or whatever.
Yeah, I'm sure there's all kinds of permits.
It was just, it was all this weird stuff. So I was like, we had it. It was cool. We may do it again. But as of now, I think people want to go exploring Tulsa on their own. They can find that map online, and then they just want to get straight to the heart of it when they visit us. So the bus is still there. People take photos with the bus all the time. And
dude, I love that shit. Like when we went to Dallas, I went to where Bonnie and Clyde are buried. Like I always check out shit. Like
me too. It's my thing, man.
What's here? I need to find it. And like, just to see that glimpse, like you said, the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory would be insane. You'd be like, what the fuck?
You know, I went there too. I went to Munich to where they filmed it. The gates of that are still there. Way. It's like a 150-year-old power factory in Munich, Germany. If you go on Delta Bravo Urban Exploration Team, put that in Facebook and then look through those, you're gonna be like, what? I mean, yeah, I actually went to the chocolate factory. When we're done, I'll text you the photos anyway.
Okay.
I'll send it to you. Yeah.
Sick. Well, we always end with like a song that the guest picks. We could play any song. And also I wanted to know your favorite version, if you have one, of the song Danny Boy.
Wow. That's a great, no one's ever asked me that. And I'm going to say, you know what? The only version I know is when Eric sings it. So I don't like, you know, when it comes on, it's like,
listen to the Pogues.
Well, I love the Pogues, and I don't even know that I've ever heard them sing Danny Boy. So I'm gonna definitely check that out. There's nothing about the Pogues that I don't like, except for that I wish they were playing soon. And I need to see that documentary too. I guess there's a.
It's amazing. Yeah, Shane McGowan's life was fucked. It's so insane.
Yeah, I need to see that, man. And we did a show with him in Ireland once, and I remember running into it was a festival, so he was playing that festival, and then I saw him in the airport. I mean, I thought I was bad. Holy shit, you know. So he lived up. He lived up to the hype, no doubt about it. But definitely a Pogues fan. So I will check that out. And then what was the other song?
No, you can pick a song that we'll just play to end the show.
I'm going to go The 80s by Killing Joke. That's my joint.
Hell yeah. Fuck yeah. Well, again, thank you so much for taking the time. Are you out there pretty regularly? Like if
I live in Tulsa full time. I mean, I live in a historic hotel downtown. I'm less than a mile and a half away from the Outsiders House Museum, so I can be there at any given time.
Okay.
And there's no traffic here. There's no rush here. We have the largest rideable road left from Route 66, so there's a whole revival of that. We have Kane's Ballroom. It's the second to last place that Sex Pistols ever played, and all your favorites have played there. It's the CBGBs of the Midwest. Or to be like Bill Graham presents the Fillmore, like all the shows at the Fillmore. Imagine it's still here. It's historic. We have the BOK Center, which is like the Staples Center or Barclays in New York. You get all the tier 1 acts here. 35 different, 32 mom and pop hamburger joints, all back from early as the 30s and 40s to about the 60s. So it's literally a slice of Americana, like before all the dumb shit. Really, it's like it's almost like the land that time forgot. And we have the third largest collection of Art Deco buildings, only second and third behind New York and Chicago. So it's this beautiful city that oil built up at the turn of the century, and it was dripping in it, and then it got shuttered in the 80s, and now it's back on the map, and all of these great things are happening. So I feel like the smartest dude again that left this dog snoring. It's great. He's like trying to tell me, hey man, I gotta get back to sleep. But it's the greatest. It's the greatest, biggest little city I've ever lived in, and I don't want for anything. I thought, you know, I'll tell you this. Leaving LA, my biggest fear was that like you can live in LA and the world comes to you just by default. And I was like, I like that because I didn't have to do much. I could just be there and people would always be coming through. Hey, I'm coming to Hollywood. I'm coming to LA. Are you going to be around? And I was always, you know, giving them the tour. But as fate would have it, I came here and I found the same thing. People are always going to New York to LA, driving road trips. And they always like, hey, I remembered you were there. Are you going to be there? I've had people stop by out of the blue from high school while I'm at the Outsiders House sitting on the, you know, on the back porch. And they just sit down and go, hey, bro, long time. I'm like, holy. They're like, man, I took a chance thinking you were going to be here. And here you are. And so it's even more special. So if you ever find yourself in Tulsa, Oklahoma, look me up. You know where to find me. And I'll give you the nickel tour.
Dude, I'm down. I got a lot of friends from Oklahoma. There's a good skate shop out there, 91 Skate. And after the COVID thing simmers or whatever we need for this life to get back into full throttle, yeah, if I cruise through, I definitely want to check this stuff out. It all speaks to me, man. I'm down.
Yeah, you'd love it for sure.
Well, thanks, dude, and stay safe. And I got 5 years, about 10 or 11 behind you, but
hey man, one day at a time. Yeah, it's all we got is today. And you know what? I lied when I said I'd end with the last thing. I'll end with this. Like, you know what? I used to collect years and it was almost fatal to me. And now I just collect days. And so all we have is today. And my mistake was to break it into larger chunks. Today is the only thing I have. Yesterday's history and tomorrow's a mystery. And if I worry about either one, I miss the beauty of today. So staying in the now, staying present is my number one focus. And when I do that, everything works out. So
100% agree.
Congrats on the 5, man.
Fuck yeah. Thank you, dude.
Right.
Very, very much a pleasure.
I appreciate it, man. Be good or be good at it.
You
Stay
too.
gold.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Talking Schmit. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Anchor, Spotify, or anywhere you get your podcasts. When you subscribe, you'll get notifications every Tuesday of new episodes the minute they become available. Also, please leave reviews and a 5-star rating. It's the best way to help the show grow. All of the episodes will always remain free, but if you would like to help support the show, you can do so at TalkinSchmit.com, where you can pick up some merchandise like t-shirts, beanies, hats, and stickers. The website has an entire archive of all of the episodes, with extra photos and videos. Email us with any suggestions, comments, or ways that the show may have improved your life at talkingschmit@gmail.com. All interviews are conducted, edited, and produced by Schmitty. The intro music is Mary's Cross by the band Nature. Very special shout out goes to the executive director, Sharal Camisa.
Shout out.
Love it!
This is Talking Schmit, where the Rolodex is deep, but the conversation is deeper.